Millions of visitors flock to Cades Cove, Tennessee every year. The once bustling community in the Smoky Mountains is full of memories of what once was. However, few have heard the story of Russell Gregory and the murder that shocked the community and was the ultimate act of betrayal. Here is the story. Russell Gregory was one of the early settlers in Cades Cove. He built his cabin from the timber that surrounded the cabin and began to raise his family. Gregory was soon followed by many more settlers that couldn't resist the community feeling, as well as the beautiful surroundings that Cades Cove offered. In fact, over 700 families settled in, built cabins, and became part of the self-supporting Kip family. Every family that settled brought something to the table. One raised cattle, another would produce honey, and yet another would grow corn. The community took care of each other, and everyone had plenty of whatever they needed. Gregory had 4 sons, and all of them helped to raise massive amounts of vegetables. However, Gregory's son Charles always held a special place in his heart. Gregory would spend days at a time in the woods with Charles, teaching him the ways of the land, and it was clear that young Charles was the pride of his father's heart. By 1860, rumors began to circulate that the country was in turmoil and war was coming. Most folks in Cades Cove tried their best to keep the problems of the world outside as they enjoyed their peaceful paradise. In 1861, the rumors turned to reality, and the Civil War was now in full effect. It didn't take long for the chaos to find its way into the cove. The families that were once a part of a strong community began to divide. It seemed that the church services were the place that most arguing happened, as everyone was in the same spot at the same time. Those that supported the Union sat on one side of the church, while the Confederate supporters sat on the other. Eventually, the threat of violence grew so great that church services were canceled altogether. The chaos even found its way inside the very home of Russell Gregory. While Gregory was a devout patriot that supported the Union, not everyone agreed. 2 of his sons signed up to fight for the Union Army. However, the other 2 signed up for the Confederates, including his precious Charles. Since Cades Cove sits right between the state line of Tennessee and North Carolina, it became quite common for the Confederates stationed in North Carolina to cross the mountain and raid the cove. The soldiers would steal the cattle, trample the crops, and defile the women. After this occurred a few times, Russell Gregory had enough. With all the young men gone to fight in the war, Cades Cove only had the old men left to defend it. Gregory devised a system of placing the children on top of the mountain and would blow a horn to warn when the Confederates were coming. Before long, all the men across Cades Cove heard the horn blowing. The Confederates were coming. The women hid all their valuables under the floorboards of the house, and all the men took their guns, and when the Confederates came riding in, one group of old men attacked on the left, and while they reloaded, another group would fire on the right. The Confederates were so shocked they tucked their tail and rode away. The next morning, the commander of the Confederates tried to figure out what had happened. It didn't take but a second for Charles Gregory to stand up. He had been a part of the Confederate army that attacked the cove. Charles told the commander that he knew who started the rebellion. Charles told the commander that the first shot that was fired was one he recognized. He said he learned to shoot on that rifle and knew the sound of it anywhere. It was a rifle of his father, Russell Gregory. The commander organized his men, and this time they attacked in the dead of night when no one was expecting them. Young Charles led the group straight to his father's cabin, and the men busted through the front door. Gregory's wife began to scream, and he jumped up out of bed as fast as his 73-year-old bones would allow him to. He grabbed his trusty rifle and pointed it, but before he could pull the trigger, at least a half-dozen bullets ripped into the body of Russell Gregory, and he fell dead. It was the ultimate betrayal of placing brother against brother and father against sons that the Civil War was known for. Russell Gregory was buried in the cemetery of the Primitive Baptist Church that so many tourists walk through every year. The mountain that Gregory built was renamed as Bald Mountain in his order.